Talking with the experts.
In episode 400, Gregory Cooke explains to us how to close those high-ticket deals without sales calls or closing in the direct messages.
And I had to really develop myself to be able to close at a decent level, right? But I always still feel uncomfortable, just like you said, in that situation, because it's that battle and who gives in first. And I don't believe that's the best way to buy. And I don't believe it's for consumers, it's also the best place to buy. And I think COVID and the pandemic sped up consumer buying behavior to purely online, and people are a lot more comfortable making decisions, now necessarily without speaking to someone. And for me, I now never jump on sales calls. Even before I created the system, I just didn't like sitting there. I did a few, but when I see someone, I see the content they're putting out and I want to invest in them. If it's a mentorship, a program, an event, I will literally just send them a message saying, hey, love your stuff. How can I get started? And people have closed me for, 10,000 plus off 4 messages.
Talking with the experts.
Talking with the Experts would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
And welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. My next guest is Greg Cooke, and we're going to be discussing how to close those high-end ticket deals without sales calls or closing in those direct messages. I love that. Apparently, it removes the need for the biggest growth bottleneck of coaches, experts, consultancies, and agency businesses by allowing them to make high-ticket sales without the sales calls and being in their direct messages. I am so looking forward to that. Greg is the CEO of Constant Close, and it's a first company in the online space that removes the need for sales calls when selling high-ticket services and products. He now is most known for helping coaches, consultants, and experts close $3,000 to $50,000 in sales deals without any sales appointments, sales calls, or messages. He's also an entrepreneur and a mental health advocate, the creator of the Friday Founders Foundation, which is a not-for-profit that every Friday afternoon allows founders to anonymously book a call to offload their stress and their pressures and have someone to talk to who understands the journey they are on. That is very much needed in our society, believe me. Welcome, Greg. Thank you so much for joining me after that long-winded introduction.
That's all good. Thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here.
So tell me, how did you get started in offering this particular deal to coaches and consultants?
By complete accident. So I think I've been auctioneer now for 10 years, kind of in the online space. Started off in e-commerce when I was 15 years old. First 5 years had e-commerce brands, then moved into agency space. And we had a e-com consultancy and agency, which at the height had 42 staff members. So it got reasonably big. And it was throughout that process, we had a team of 8 sales reps, and they were great, great people. But for me, someone who's been in sales since a very young age, even had a Jaguar Land Rover apprenticeship at 16 on the car sales floor. Everyone was a good car salesman. and then cold calling at 18, 12 hours a day, selling IT services, computers and sort of stuff. I've been in sales quite a long time. I think in the online space, what I started to notice with when at the e-com consultancy was a shift in, I guess, in buying behavior. Humans will always buy for the same reasons, going back history and years and years and years. That will never change. The psychology stays the same. But in the online space, I found that people were getting fed up and used to being pitched strategy calls. Hey, jump on a 45-minute strategy call. You jump on, you build the rapport, they dig into challenges and the so-so, and then at the end, you buy in a pressure cooker. And, you do have to be a reasonably strong person to say no when someone is particularly good at sales so I just spotted that, and I didn't like that process myself. And also with a team of 8 sales reps, it's a lot of stress, a lot of managing, and my bulk of my time was now not spent doing the e-commerce stuff. It was spent managing a sales team and the churn rate and everything that comes with that. So I set out to create a brand new process to sell these high ticket deals that we were doing without the need for sales reps. So it's about 6 to 8 months, tens of thousands of dollars of testing, hours and hours and hours. I can't even tell you how many variations of what we did. And kind of by the end of that 6 to 8 months, we had the same close rate without a sales call, using sales funnels and a bunch of other tactics I'm sure we'll delve into, than we did with having someone actually book a call and pick up the phone. And so it saved thousands and thousands in commissions, because we were paying around 15% of our revenue was in sales commissions. So that was a massive bill we didn't need to pay, didn't need to spend time managing sales reps. And we found that the consumers, like the customers who were coming on, they were actually a lot better quality, because sometimes when you get customers who've been through a sales call, not everyone, obviously, they still work very well. I'm not saying they don't, it's just a different process. But because a lot of time they might have brought in that pressure cooker, they're not actually ready to buy, because that salesperson just wants to make their commission, which is completely fair enough. And so it just removed also that quality that quality aspect as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
It sounds very intriguing, because as I said to you before we came on, I can get them to the point of the sale, but actually closing the deal is something that I am not good at. I don't know whether it's a mindset thing or just I'm not asking the right questions or giving the right information, but I never seem to close the deal very well. And that's the part that dealing with the objections, I think, is the part where I'm more or less not able to overcome those. And I think that's where I fold.
Yeah, 100%. And because it's, as a human, that's the most uncomfortable. That's one of the most uncomfortable positions, because it's just a psychological battle, right? You've got them to that stage, you've got them to dig up their pain. You then use that pain to obviously try and help them make a decision. And I know I will say one thing to your listeners, like, sales calls work, and I'm not saying they don't. I think sometimes when people listen to my message, I think, oh, he's saying so. I'm not saying it's me against them. Like, they work, right? But they don't work for everyone. Like you just said there. I've closed now millions in high ticket sales on the phone throughout my years for my own offer and other people's offers and stuff. And I've got a stutter, I've got severe dyslexia, dyscalculia, I've got a bunch of other things, and I had to really develop myself to be able to close at a decent level, right? But I always still feel uncomfortable, just like you said, in that situation, because it's that battle and who gives in first. And I don't believe that's the best way to buy. And I don't believe it's for consumers, it's also the best place to buy. And I think COVID and the pandemic sped up consumer buying behavior to purely online, and people a lot more comfortable making decisions, now necessarily without speaking to someone. And for me, I now never jump on sales calls. Even before I created the system, I just didn't like sitting there. I did a few, but when I see someone, I see the content they're putting out and I want to invest in them. If it's a mentorship, a program, an event, I will literally just send them a message saying, hey, love your stuff. How can I get started? And people have closed me for, 10,000 plus off 4 messages. and sent me a strike ring, and I've invested because I've seen what they've been doing, and that's the way I purchased, because I didn't want to waste time in that situation.
Yeah, I'm same. I'm same. If I like them, then I will buy something from them. But yeah, I even if someone's doing the sales process with me, I feel really uncomfortable, because I know at the end that it's either I'm not ready to buy, so I need to say no, or it's overpriced for what I think that the value to me is worth. So yeah, I'm uncomfortable either way.
Yeah, and it's that time aspect, as well as the business owner. You've got a employee, or if they're a contractor, spending typically, the average close rate is 25%, right? So, and I break this down always, people. So if you had 5 appointments a day for 5 days a week, which is 25 appointments, and you had a 25% close rate, well, how many hours have you just wasted on the phone with people who didn't buy? You can say, well, my close rate's higher and all that sort of stuff. Great. Okay. You've also got no shows in that. So about 80% show up to the call. So 20% won't actually even show up, but your calendar's still blocked off for that hour. So it's not so much that also the commissions and the money saved, because a lot of people might be doing the sales calls themselves still if they're a small business, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners might be. But it's the time saved, and the for me, I was able to get back into my genius zone and my creative zone, because I wasn't spending the time managing on the sales side. And and I'm not saying this is easy, and I'm sure we'll delve into what a system looks like in a second, but if this isn't, you just set it up once and forget, and it's like an automated thing. Like, it's not that at all. Like, there is still some effort required, but it's far easier, saves so much time and money, and still is able to close. The highest one we've had closed was $48,000 USD without a sales call using this system. And I think when people visually see it as well, they're like, that makes sense. And consumers, because it's a new way of buying for them, and one that they're already starting to adapt to, it's like, this company genuinely cares and all that sort of stuff. Because I think sometimes sales reps can also give companies a bad rep. I've seen very, very good companies get a bad rep because of 1 or 2 reps who just push to get their commissions, which that's what, they're not getting a base salary. That's what they got to put food on the table, and that's fine. It's just the way it works, and I didn't like the way it worked. So that's why I set out to change it.
Okay, well, tell me how you changed it.
Sure. So it's very, very similar. This is quite kind of the beauty of it. So let's say you are investing in a business program. Let's just say Rose is going to go ahead and invest in this mentor, and you might see an ad or a bit of content, and that's the exact same stuff, right? You probably go to a sales funnel. They catch your email and your phone and your details. You watch a short video, or you might be a lead magnet or a low ticket product, right? And then you apply. So I think most of your listeners have probably been through a similar process of seeing an ad and going through a process for some form of service or program. So the difference now is, once you apply, usually you would expect to book a call, right? You go to the next page, hey, book a 15-minute discovery call, or book a 45-minute discovery call. You would wait until that call comes, you jump on the call and just go through the process which we went through there. So what we did is, now once you apply, you cannot book a call. There is no book call, which first thing it does to the prospect is, oh, okay, right, that's strange. I'm not used to that. My God, these guys are either really, really busy, which gives you authority, or they're really hard to work with and people want what they can't have. So that really plays into your favor. And what we do on our end is we manually look at the application. If we like the application, we approve it. And once we approve it, you have 5 days to enroll. And what happens is, you get sent a private demonstration link to a sales page with usually an hour to an hour and a half webinar style or podcast style private demonstration, breaking down exactly what you do and how you do it. And on that page is all your typical social proof, authority, all that typical stuff. And there's a 5-day unique timer on that page. So if you click today, no matter where you go in the world, even if you fly to Fiji or Hawaii or wherever, and you buy a different device and you log on, that time will still be unique to you. And what it does, it creates a sense of urgency. So if someone says, if you don't buy today, it'll be gone next week. Me and you both know we can book a call and you can enroll because they want you as a client, right? If you do not enroll within these 5 days, you cannot enroll. it's gone. And the only way you can re-enroll is when we reopen the enrollment window, which is typically every 30 to 90 days, depending on capacity. And you have 48 hours then when the enrollment window opens to re-enroll. So what you get is you get a waiting list of buyers who miss the enrollment but continue to see your content and your emails and that sort of stuff. And then they've got 48-hour windows sporadically to enroll. They're there and they're literally waiting at the laptops when they know the enrollment window is opening, because there might be 10 spots. And there's that real urgency, not the fake urgency we're used to seeing everywhere online. So that's kind of an overview. And then obviously they go and enroll and become a client. But there's obviously a system behind that where we still support them. So just because there's no sales call doesn't mean they can't ask questions. So, for example, as soon as they apply, we our inbound rep will phone them with the phone number they put in and say, hey, thanks for applying. Just, the team's looking over your application now. And that's like 30 seconds, a minute call, right? And then we send them emails, SMSs, reach out to them 3 different social platforms as well to let them know if you've got any questions. And there's a whole flow and system during that 5 days on how we support them. There's over 22 touch points during that 5 days where, our internal team is trying to support them and reaching out to them. So they feel supported, but they can make that purchase decision in their own space, in their own limited time. But, they're not buying in a pressure cooker. So again, that's kind of a audio version, I guess, of how it works. There's a massive visual part which you can see, if you go and check us out. But that's essentially the process.
Wow, much better process because then the buyer has the opportunity to buy, as you said, in their own time. Well, within the 5-day window, but it's still in their own time, and they're not feeling pressured in a 45-minute discovery call that they have to actually buy at the end of the call. So heaps better, and I think it's a better ROI, isn't it? Doing it your way.
Yeah. So well, it's massive, because if you think of the time save, which I always calculate time as ROI because time is money, and you've got staff, you've got employees, and then obviously the commission saved as well. On that point is huge. So it took a long time for us to get to the point where it makes now sense to not do sales calls and not have that booked in. The first few months were awful. We would spend a load of money on it and it just wasn't working. And that's why it took lots of iterations. And I never, ever, ever expected to be on a podcast like this and being partnering with people now across the world, installing the system for them. That was never my intention. It was just to solve our own pain, because when you're running a 42 staff agency and consultancy, there's lots of pain points there, and this is the way that we just solved ours. So yeah.
Wow, it's an intriguing process, that's for sure. I think I have to do a bit of investigation into how it works, and that'll get me out of doing sales calls.
That's something you probably started your company because you love delivering the service and you love seeing the impact. And that's really why we're mainly coach consultants. It does work for agencies as well, but most of our partners tend to be coaches and consultants because that's what they're there for. Trauma coaches, business style coaches, categories, and it's because people love delivering it. But they get stuck then in setting appointments, getting their phone. It takes the love out of getting result for them sometimes, and that's why I believe most of them end up, most coaches end up truly fading, just like most businesses do, and stopping because they started for the impact, and what they've ended up doing is being in the DMs all day, trying to set appointments, getting off the phone with people who don't want to buy, learning the systems, which takes a long time unless you invest thousands and thousands. And that's kind of what our mission is, to allow coaches and consultants to make the impact they want to have, but without the biggest growth
things at the end that you have to do to get business.
Yeah, and business. You'll always have. Business is a game of sales. If you're not making sales, you haven't got a business, right? Because you're not making money. But it's how you make those sales, and for me, I always speak to people. In fact, I'm going down to London to meet a client in early January. And he has trained some of the most famous sales teams in the world in terms of the online space. And he's now adapting this for his consultancy. And I was very surprised when he showed an initial interest, because usually there's a lot of sales agencies out there and trainers, and they usually hate me because I'm not telling people, I'm just showing people a different way to close deals. And he's one of the first like actual sales agency who's like, oh God, that sounds better. That sounds easier. So it's been a hard challenge getting the message through and doing it in a way that doesn't make you look, which is my worst cringy thing, like a guru or that sort of stuff. That just really cringes me out, and that's not what I want to be viewed as. But you've got to get that message out, and when no one else is speaking about this, and as far as I know, I'm the only person to be doing this in the online space, doing it this way. There's an uphill battle there, but I believe firmly in the next 12 to 18 months, this will be the new way of selling high ticket services and coaching and consulting online.
I think it sounds like it, because nobody wants to be sold to, do they? They want to be able to make a decision in their own time, in their own, do their own research and not be pressured into it.
Yeah, and it's also the type of people you want to attract. So there are some companies or coach consultancies where, in fact, this might not make sense to install because their close rate is so good, and their reps are so good, and and that's this. I'm not saying it's for absolutely everybody, because I'd be lying, right? But it's for the coach and consultants who don't have access to pay the thousands of dollars it takes to hire the world's best sales reps, because it does. It's not an easy process, and it takes a lot of money, and there's a whole group below that who aren't making multi tens and millions a year in their coaching consultancy, and they're kind of our typical partners, and they're the people who I see the most impact with this whole process with.
Yeah, good stuff. Well done. I think it's kudos to you, and hopefully it does a lot better than it in the coming years when people get on board with it. Greg, where can people find you if they want to learn more about this process or indeed work with you?
Yeah, so there's two main places. You can go to www.constantclose.co, or you can. My main two focus platforms are YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you go to Gregory Cooke on LinkedIn, I'm one of the first ones to come up, and then YouTube, I'm releasing at the moment 2 videos a week, breaking down this whole system, and also a bit of behind the scenes. I call it my coffee meeting Friday, where I literally just sit in front of the camera for usually 10 to 15 minutes and tell you what's gone wrong in my week, what's gone right, how I'm growing things. Behind the scenes when we're traveling to meet clients and all that sort of stuff. So they're the two platforms, constantclose.co and YouTube and LinkedIn, to follow my personal, personal journey. Feel free to send me a message on there, and I'll happily send over some free resources for people.
Good stuff. Now, I'd like to ask you, if I may, about Friday Founders Foundation and a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I actually did a podcast last week where I had a full hour episode, and it was more around entrepreneur mental health and my journey, and I broke it down in that. But essentially, as a 16-year-old, I had PTSD, I had suicide ideation, I wrote a suicide letter, and had a lot of mental health struggles. And entrepreneurship was my way out, almost like my therapy. It was where I could put my time into, and obviously there was a lot more that went into that. But over my years being an entrepreneur and being a founder in this space, I believe there was a huge hidden mental health crisis going on with founders and entrepreneurs. But it's one that's not still spoken about enough, because we are the leaders, right? We can't look weak. Who do you speak to? Well, your family was already pressured because of the work you do. Do you want to put more pressure on to let them know you're struggling with what you're doing? Do you speak to an employee? Well, that makes you look weak. And I personally found myself in this situation during the pandemic. I had, at that time, 32 mouths to feed on our team, with people laying off left, right, and centre, and everything that came with that. And I was at a pretty dark place during that time. And I'm very lucky. I had my wife, who was also a business partner, to speak to, and who was absolutely incredible. But most founders don't. When I've had those conversations, I've realized how many of them just don't have that. So I wanted to do something to help and give back that didn't involve, taking making sales or, trying to do it as a business or anything. I just wanted to just give back. So we come up with the idea that at the end of your week on a Friday, I know founders and entrepreneurs sometimes work 7 days a week. I've done that, but we had to pick a day. On a Friday afternoon, my calendar is blocked off for the Friday Founders Foundation. So any founder, any entrepreneur can go on and they can book a 15-minute anonymous call. They don't even have to put in the name if they don't want to. They don't have to do a Zoom. It can be on the phone or whatever, and they can just offload their pressures, stress, and what's going on for them to another founder, an entrepreneur who's mental health trained like myself, mental health first aider, who's been through a similar process and still goes through it. And someone who actually understands. We think as entrepreneurs, like we think, oh, no one understands because they're not doing what I'm doing. So that was the idea and the concept. And we did a few trial runs, and it's officially going live now next week. I was about to do a post after this podcast to the website's live and everything. So we'll have our first public people booking in next Friday.
Wow,
so
that's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. It's always good to give back to those who have given so much. And
definitely, and
people a lot with mental health challenges in the entrepreneurial space really, unless they take it home with them, it's almost a pandemic in itself.
It is, and it's just not. I mean, there are people speaking about it, but it's still not spoken about enough. It's spoken about, but there's still there's a lot of podcasts about it, which is fantastic. But that's great. But actually, that personal help where you don't have to pay for a mindset coach or that stuff, which is still a great thing to do, and a life coach and all that's brilliant thing to do. That initial almost like first aid, which can be the difference of
could be life and death.
Well, I mean, I was about to say, suicide in men is still the biggest killer under the age of 35. Mm. And I believe it's only going to get worse because I'm 25, but my generation and the generation below me, I think due to social media and just the current world climate, are the worst affected. I don't know, I said the worst affected, but it's still going to get that. I think as they get older, it's going to get worse, and then I think it will get better. So I personally believe it's always going to get. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, which is really sad. It might sound really negative to say, but that's why I wanted to do something. Just and I don't know what this will lead into. It could lead into all sorts, and the only mission here is to generally help as many founders and entrepreneurs as we possibly can, give them a safe place to come talk to people who understand what they're going through. Have been through some aspect of that.
Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure learning about your new process. I think I'm in love with it, and I'm going to go and check it out. And is there any words of wisdom you'd like to share with our audience today?
I always end every podcast with a mistake that I made. I think definitely throughout my early years and really up until a few years ago, and that was money over impact. And I was always prioritizing that, and I believe that's why sometimes I didn't end up in the best places and stuff. So I always leave the end of the podcast saying impact over money. And once you have that impact and you see that genuine fire inside you burning, which a lot of people struggle to get, the money, the things you want and you think of will come. Just prioritize people, value, and and really helping the people around in your inner circle. And I always believe good things will come.
It's been a pleasure, Greg. Thank you so much for sharing your journey too. That I think you're right. It's always giving back is better than not. I think if we can leave a social footprint and leave an impact so others are feeling better about themselves, I think the better the world will be.
Definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for having me on. Cheers.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.